He might not come to me to talk about what he had done over the weekend, but he came to me when he was in trouble. And that's what's going on here with this situation. These guys know trouble's coming. They saw the interaction between Nabal and David's men. They knew that spelled trouble. And the only one that they could think of that could do something, that could make this better, that had a chance of making this better, was Abigail. So they went to that. And I pray that each one of us tries to be that individual that when people are having trouble, so they went to that. And I pray that each one of us tries to be that individual that when people are having trouble, when there's a crisis, when there's a circumstance going on in someone else's life or in our lives, that we'd be the one that people that would go to, can you pray about this? Or can you help me with this? Or those kind of things. And that would turn to us in that. So you see the railing in that. Then you also see the relationship. It says, the report. And David, this is continuing on in verse 14. Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on them. So he's going to start telling what's going on, okay? Now that Hebrew word that's translated railed there, it means to shout at, it means to address angrily, and it means to attack with screams. In other words, he didn't just say, no, I can't help you. He was screaming at them. He was yelling at them. He was calling them all sorts of names and all the different things that were going on there. So his refusal to help wasn't just not at this time, or I'd love to help you but I can't, or anything of those lines. He just exploded on David's messengers here. And that screaming, yelling, angry-filled tirade that went on in that. And then we go on with the report of the help there in verses 15 and 17. Through 17. But the men were talking about David's men, but the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall unto us both night and day, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. In other words, Nabal's men are talking to Abigail, and he says, when we were out in the wilderness, when we were out in the thick, when we were out, where anybody could have come in and taken some sheep or could have done harm to us and taken our property, they were like a wall. It was like when we went to bed at night, it was like we were in a fortress. We knew they were out there protecting us. We knew they were out there watching out for us. And all of that was going on. So he says, they were a safety to us, not just at night, but during the day as well. And so all of that going on. And so he gets them and he's saying, this is what they were to us. But notice how it goes on. It says the regarding in the report. Look at verse number 17. Now therefore, based upon what your husband did, based upon what David's men did. Now therefore, know and consider what thou wilt do. For evil is determined against our master and against all his household. For he is a son of Belial, and that a man cannot speak to him. So again, they come to her and they say, here's what it was, here's what they did. What are you going to do? Knowing how good they have been to us and how they've looked out for us and how they've protected us, and then what your husband did, how are you going to respond to that? How are you going to make it right? Because look at here what it says. It says, for evil is determined against our master. Your husband kicked the hornet's nest. Something's going to happen here, all right? Not only against him, but against the household. And then he goes on and says he's a son of Belial, and that a man cannot speak to him. He's not someone that you can have a rational conversation. I can't come to him and talk to him like I'm talking to you. Hey, listen, David's guys were good to us. I can't do that to him. He yells, he cusses, he screams, he gets mad, all of those kind of things. And because of that, David and his men are fixing to come down here and do something serious to this. What are you going to do? And again, putting it into her lap on the response there. The next thing that we want to see is the reconciliation in verses 18 through 35. The preparation. Look at verse number 18. Then Abigail, let me just look at the speed of the preparation. Then Abigail made haste. And it kind of goes away. And then there's some things that you've got to act on it. You've got to respond to it. And this is one of those that it took a decisive and quick action, and she made haste. She did exactly that. Going on in verse 18, the substance of the preparation. And took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. All right. Again, when she is going to David, the thing that David had gone to Nabal about was, hey, it's sheep shearing time, and you know, we're out here in the wilderness and we're fugitives and we need something to eat, and have you got anything? And if so, put it in the hands of our man, send it back. Nah, you know, and all the stuff that was going on there. Here she's coming back, and look, notice whatever. I mean, first of all, it's plenty. I mean, there's no skimp. 200 loaves, all right? The 2 bottles of wine, 5 sheep, 5 measures of corn, 100 clusters, 200 cakes. I mean, all of this food she's compiled together, and she's not skimping on the quantity. She's not skimping on the quality. Not only that, she's not only getting plenty of it, but she's getting stuff that's already prepared. Look at what it says there. Loaves, that's when it's already made. Okay, bottles, that's when it's already been processed. 5 sheep, ready dressed. All it's got to be is thrown on the barbecue, and it's ready to go. All right, 5 measures of parched corn. The grapes have already been dried to raisins. The cake of figs, all of it's already been processed. It's a meal. All you got to do is stick it in the microwave, heat it up, and you're ready to eat. That's the way we'd think of it. Okay, it's prepared. It's as far as prepared as they would have at that time. All right, so that once that food was delivered, they could take that, put it together, heat it up, fix it, and they could be able to feed the men that David had coming up with them. So, I mean, it just shows the wonderful blessing that is. And that's what it was meant to be. As we get down to verse number 27, we'll look at that. Abigail wanted it to be a blessing to David and David's men for what all they had done. The procedure there in verse number 19. And she said unto her servants, Go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. So again, Abigail's one of those people that not only shows a godly woman, but it shows a wise woman. It shows someone that has discernment of the circumstances and the people that she's interacting with. And she knows her husband. She knows that he's not a person you can talk to. And so she just kept her mouth shut. She didn't go getting permission. She didn't go. She made a decision, and she was going to act on it and the consequences thereof. And, just a wonderful thing, trying to get that together and trying to stop the bloodshed and trying to protect the household and all of those kind of things. And I think, again, it's just a wonderful model and example for us. Jesus, when he was sending out his disciples, this was the instructions he gave. He said, Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents, harmless as doves. And I think that's exactly what she was doing. She realized she was in a bad situation. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. And she was going to do the best thing she could do. She's going to be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Going on, we see the parley there in verse number 20. And it was so as she rode on the ass, and she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men come along against her, and she met them. I just love how you see how God works in these situations. Now think about this. You got David and them coming up to attack Nabal. You've got her having heard the report of what happened, trying to get the food together and coming down. Now, it's not like here where we say, okay, they're coming from the mountains. We're coming from Central, so I-40, obviously. They didn't have those roads back then. And yet, with all that property, with all the routes that could have been and all the different ways they could have gone over to get water here or whatever it was, God had them come completely together, face to face. And I think that's just a wonderful picture that when God is directing our steps, when God is directing our lives, it works. It all comes together. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Psalms 37, 23, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. So in both of those passages, it shows that God is very much wanting to direct our steps. And when he's doing that, you have these coincidences that happen, where you meet the person that you need to meet at the time you need to meet them in order to do what God is wanting us to do in those situations. And he's obviously wanting to protect her family and save those. So God's directing that. Then we see the peeved. Look in verse number 21 and 22. Now David had said, surely in vain have I kept all this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him. And he hath requited me evil for good. And so, and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave all that pertaineth to him by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall. So he says, I am so mad. I can't believe that we spent all that time protecting him and his men and their sheep and try to be just as good a neighbors and a good a friend as we could. And now he wants to go do that. I'm going to kill every man alive in that family, in that household of those servants. Every single one of them. And he's mad, he's upset, and he's looking at it and trying to plan how he's going to do that. And he's just the emotions of it, and he's out for vengeance. He's out for blood, caught up in the emotions. He's mad as can be, and he's getting ready to exact some revenge because of that. Then we see the prostrated. Look at verses 23 and 24. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass, and fell before David on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and fell at his feet, and said, upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be. And let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thy handmaid. Again, just the picture of someone that is willing to put themselves, she's innocent now, willing to put herself in the place of someone who's guilty and say, put it on me. That's a picture of Christ. Just a wonderful, the honor and the respect that she has for David coming in. She jumps off. She prostrates herself before him. She's making sure that he knows that she respects and is acknowledging his position as a future king. All of that's going on, and the exact opposite of the way her husband, who just, looked down his nose and yelled at him and all of the different things that were going on. So just a wonderful way of and the other thing that it does is it shows us, here's David. He's mad. He is ready. He's headed up. He's sitting there sharpening his sword the whole way. I can't wait till I get there. She comes down the hill. She jumps off, she runs, she drops down, she starts saying this. But the way she's saying it, and the tone that she's using, and the respect that she's using, it's like watching those people where they're solid red and the steam's coming out their ears, and they're so mad, and somebody just walks up and pours a bucket of cold water on top of them. Just cools them off. The Bible says it this way, Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turneth away wrath. She had the ability to speak in such a way that even when David was just, he just calmed down and got control of his emotions. But the opposite of that is the rest of Proverbs 15:1, but a grievous words stir up the anger. It's just like pouring gas on the fire. You're going to have a fireball. The petition, look at verses 25 through 31. the petition for discernment. Look at 25 and 26. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man Belial, even Nabal, for as is his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But thine handmaid saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, as thy soul liveth, seeing that the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. So what she's doing here is, and again, you love Abigail for doing this, is she's basically asking David, I want you to really take a good look at who you're dealing with here. You're getting ready to kill all the men in this household because of one person, and I want you to really look at who he is. He's not worth it. He's not worth, first of all, getting you upset. But he's definitely not worth bringing punishment to all the other people because of him. He's not worth it. And so making sure that, when she says man of Belial, it's saying he's a man of wickedness. He's a man of worthlessness. He's not something that was worth that time. And she goes on and says he's just acting like his namesake. That word Nabal, it means foolish, or someone who's a fool. And that's what he's doing, and that's how he's acting. So she just says, don't respond to that. Don't let that thing. Trust God. God divinely put you and me in this path. And he did that to keep you from going up there and exacting revenge on them. To save you from the blood that was getting ready to be shed. Trust God and let him take care of that, because God will deal with him and deal with him. And let God be in control and let vengeance be his. Then we see the petition for disbursement. Look at verse number 27. This is the verse I told you we'd get to later. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. So all of that, the food and the drink and everything else, and she says, I brought this. Please, would you just take and to disperse that to all your men? Give them I want to feed them a good meal. And so she makes sure that that's done. The one thing that her husband wouldn't do, she does from the very beginning without being asked. And then we see the petition for the delay, verses 28 through 31. It says, I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee, and to seek thy soul. But the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the life with the Lord thy God. The souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, no offense of heart unto my Lord, neither that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. That's a whole lot of words to say, basically, that she's saying in a request. That's what that word prayer means, for David to delay going and seeking that vengeance. To trust that God is working and allow him to come through and do what needs to be done as far as dealing with the situation and enacting the vengeance that is there. So she just recognizes that David's getting ready to do something that he's going to, if he did it, he would regret it. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I would dare say every one of us could say that we've done something that we later regretted. That would have been something that David would have regretted if he had gone up there and he had killed and destroyed all the people. He might have felt good in the moment as he was working off that anger and acting on that anger. But once he got back and he got to thinking about it, and once the Holy Spirit started convicting him of it, he would have known that it was wrong. And so Abigail's trying to keep him from that. She's wanting him so that when God puts him in that position of power, when he eventually becomes king, he can do it with a clean conscience. He can go and look at it. How many people you think in our political system have made it into the office that they were seeking to get into, but once they get in there, they feel awful about how all the underhanded stuff and all the lies and deception and all the money under the table, all the things that went on to get them into that position of power. They look at it and says, was it worth it? Now for some it probably was. But guys, that's what Abigail's trying to keep David from. She says, don't do something that you're later going to regret. Don't allow your emotions to put you in a position that later you're going to look at it and say, I wish I hadn't done those things. And so she's cautioning him to delay in that. Then we see the petition for a date. I like this one too. It says, but when the Lord, now this is faith. She knows God's going to get him to there someday. But when the Lord shall have dealt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. When God gets you to that position to where you're going to be the king or you know, that whatever it is, remember me. Now, we're going to see it's going to happen here really quick. I don't think that's what she had in mind. But it just goes to show that I believe in her mind she's thinking, you know, once he's king, it'd be nice for him to remember that I said something nice and I counseled him in a good way and I fed his men and those kind of things. He might owe me a little bit, you know. He's king. He can maybe help me out with some project or something. But something different is going to happen here in just a little bit. All right? I know you know the story. Then we see the praise of David. Look at verse number 32 and 33. And David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me, and blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which thou hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood and from avenging myself with mine own hands. So David here, first of all, he wants to recognize God in it. I believe God put you in my path. Not only that, I believe it was wonderful advice, godly advice, good advice that you give me. I think you're a good person for having done that, so he blesses her. And then goes on and he says, you kept me, or you're keeping me from doing something that I would regret later. And I just want to thank God for that, and I want to thank you for that. What a wonderful testimony that is. Have you ever had somebody come in later and say, hey, I appreciate that advice you gave me, or I appreciate you talking to me, or I appreciate you, those kind of things? That's exactly what David is doing here. He recognizes the part that Abigail's playing. More importantly, he recognizes the part that God is playing through Abigail. Then we have the pardon. Look at verses 34 and 35. Let me start again. For in very deed, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hast hasted and come to meet me, surely there hath not been left in Nabal by the morning light any that pisseth against the wall. So David receiveth of her hand that which she brought him, and said unto her, go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice, and have accepted thy person. So he said, listen, I just want to say thank you again. I'll take the food. I'll make sure the guys get it. You can head on back home and know that we're going back the other way. We're not going to come up there. We're not going to do what I planned to do. I'm going to follow your advice. I think it was good advice, and I'm going to follow it. And so making sure that all of that goes. So again, just a wonderful response to that. Then we see the retribution there in verses 36 and beginning of 39. The parting in the heart in the retribution. It says, and Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. Again, we see Abigail's wisdom in keeping her mouth shut around her husband, especially when he was drunk. She looked at him and she says, you know, this is something I need to talk to him about. Now's not the time. Same thing, dealing with people that whether they're drunk, whether they're mad, whether they're high on something, there's some times that you've got to let them get their head and their everything back to where you can have a reasonable conversation with them. And Abigail saw that, recognized that, and she says, it'll wait till tomorrow. And so she doesn't try to go in and have that conversation with him when he was drunk and not willing to listen, and it would have ended bad. So just using wisdom there. She realized, Proverbs 21, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. She knew that there wouldn't be a good result to that conversation. Then we see the prideful heart in the retribution. Look at verse number 37. But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. All right, so next morning, wakes up, has his 6 cups of coffee, gets his head straightened. She says, okay, it's time to talk to him. She starts sharing with him, hey, I did this. The guys told me this. I went and did this. David said this. They're going that way. Here's what it is. And as soon as she gets through explaining to him what has happened, notice what it says there. That his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. As soon as she tells him something happens inside, and it says he becomes a stone. I don't know if it was a stroke. I don't know if he went into a coma. I don't know what really happened there. I'm thinking stroke because it's talking about the heart. But whatever it is, it became as a stone. He's just going to come unresponsive for a while. Then we see the paralyzed heart. And it came to pass after 10 days, or 10 days after I should say, that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. So here he is. He's got this heart condition that has made him like a stone. This happens for 10 days. At the end of that 10 days, he dies. And it's over and done with. God says, your time's up. Judgment's there, and it comes to pass. Then we see the praising heart in verses 39a. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord, that he hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. So David, again, he acknowledges God's hand in what's going on here. Now listen, where it says, blessed be the Lord, he's not praising God that Nabal's dead. He's praising God that God is working. And God has worked in the situation and fixed the situation. The result of it is Nabal is dead. But just trusting that God is making those, interceding on our behalf and working on those things. Then we got the romances. Last thing I want to look at, 39, last part of it in verse 44. The asking in the romances. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. And when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. So here David and her have this agreement to get married. He sends the servants to go bring her up. Now remember, Abigail is one of these wonderful women that is not only pretty on the outside, but she's pretty on the inside. She's a wise individual. She's godly on the inside. So, a very attractive combination. And so he sends the servants to pick her up, bring her back, and they're going to have a wedding. The accepting in the romance, look at verses 41 and 42. And she arose and bowed herself, bowed her face to the earth. And behold, let thine handmaiden be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. So we see a wonderful picture of here, another picture of that Christ modeled for us, having that servant's heart. Here the servants were come to inform her, David's ready to take you as a wife. We're going to take you back. There's going to be the wedding party and all of that kind of stuff. Now, put yourself in her shoes for a moment. Many people, if they got an opportunity to be elevated, she's going to be married to a king or a future king. She could possibly be a queen. And yet she's humbling herself enough to wash the feet of the servants that came to announce this to her. Again, just a wonderful picture of humility and having the kind of attitude and heart that Jesus has to minister to other people. And that's why I really love to look at Abigail and to see what she does there. So you see the servitude. You also see the speed. Look at verse number 42, beginning of it. And Abigail hasted. Again, she's excited. Hey, I can see myself marrying him. You know, I was married to Nabal. Got to be better than that. You know, anything's up from there. So, you know, she responds in a quick manner there. And then you see a sequence. And interesting how God puts all these details in here. Don't know exactly. I've never picked this apart to kind of see what it is. But God does give us this. He says, arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. So once they come and say, hey, we're taking you back, you've got David's servants leading the way. Then you've got Abigail following them on the ass there. And then after that, you've got the 5 damsels that are going along to help Abigail and minister to her as well. So you've got this parade of individuals headed back into this marriage ceremony. Then the last 2 verses, and we'll wrap up, verses 43 and 44, the additional in the romances. David also took, and then we got a bunch of names here that I'm going to really mess up, Ahinoam or something like that, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also, both of them, his wives. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Phalta, the son of Laish, which was of Gallim. So you got 3 individuals here. 3 individuals that ultimately are the wives of David. You've got David taking another one here of Jezreel, which is a village in the hill country of Judah. It was a marriage that was recognized by God, but nothing in God's word suggests that it was approved by God. I don't believe it's an example to us, but I believe it is something that God is just recording the historical things that were going on in David's life here. We have him having with the 3 wives, Abigail, the one from Jezreel, and then Michal, which was Saul's daughter. Because of the conflict between David and Saul, Saul has taken Michal back, and he has given her to another individual to marry. Later on, when we get to some more chapters on in, we're going to see that when David becomes king, when we get into 2 Samuel chapter 3, I believe it is, that David is going to bring her back and he'll be wed to her again. But I mean, again, you've got the 3 wives that's going to be part with David here. This story, as I said, it's you can't take everything from it, but I think there's a lot of it that we can take and look at it and see someone who is trying their best to live for God and to love others in a way that God would have us to do, even in circumstances that aren't optimal, that aren't the prettiest of circumstances, and does it in a wonderful way, and God blesses that. My prayer for us as we head out this week is that we continue to look for those opportunities. Brooke and I were at Spectrum I guess it was yesterday. Maybe it was Friday. I can't remember what day it was. And we were waiting in line to deal with the customer service there. Guy walks in, and we struck up a conversation and had just a wonderful time talking to that individual, sharing the gospel with that individual. inviting him to church, and he's going to come, Lord willing. But it just shows you anywhere, anytime, you can have opportunities. And so my prayer is that all of us will be sensitive to those and be ready and available to be used by God in whatever the circumstances might be. Let's all stand up and we'll close out in a word of prayer. Member Missions Committee, if you will, we'll meet really quick afterwards. We've got some things to give to you, and we'll continue on. Chris, how about you, if you would, closing us out and asking God to bless us as we head into the new week.
Heavenly Father, Lord, again, we just thank you that we were able to come into your house today, Lord, hear your word. Lord, we just thank you again for, Lord, how you take care of us, watch over us, Lord, guide us this new year, and Lord, may it be the year you come back, Lord, we pray. We thank you again, Lord, just be with us this week. Let us be a light to those that see us. Lord, we just again are so grateful. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. God bless us.